The Gerudo, a fierce desert tribe of warriors, sculpted by the harshest conditions in Hyrule. A people made up entirely of women, with one occasional exception. The Gerudo are a fascinating part of Zelda's lore, although a good deal of their history is unknown. Much of what we do know, we've had to piece together, from clues excavated from the sands of the desert itself. Tears of the Kingdom revealed a clue about their history that, when investigated closely, unlocks many of the mysteries of the Gerudo. Events in the game indicate the existence of a divide within their people that had implications lasting thousands of years and helps us better understand their past. This was a period that turned sister against sister in the name of the Demon King. This schism was the Gerudo Civil War. To better understand the context of this conflict, we should first examine the Gerudo's relationship to Ganondorf, leading to that point. The first time we meet the Gerudo, they are a band of thieves ruled by a lone man, Ganondorf. We learn that despite being primarily made up of women, every 100 years a man is born, and that by law, that man is their king. While some of the Gerudo view Ganondorf like a god, others object to his rule. The main rebel we meet in this game is Nabooru, a respected thief, turned brainwashed right hand to Ganondorf, turned sage of spirit. Nabooru's rebellion against Ganondorf is the first domino to fall in a line of events that lead to the Civil War, as when Ganondorf falls, the destiny of the Gerudo changes forever. After the events of Ocarina of Time, depending on where you are on the timeline, the Gerudo people had different outcomes following the defeat of their leader. In some games, it's said that they fled the desert, before returning to make peace with the people of Hyrule. In others, it's shown or implied that they become self-governed pirates in Ganondorf's absence. One thing is clear, however. After the events of Ocarina of Time, they do not have as much respect for their God King as their ancestors once did. Even when a new male Gerudo is born in Four Swords Adventures, as soon as he breaks the law, they kick him to the curb. We also see in Four Swords and Echoes of Wisdom that as we get further in the timeline, the Gerudo leadership is redefined. Both of these examples' tribes have a chief, and in Echoes of Wisdom, we might even be seeing the origins of a matrilineal leadership structure that could possibly be the same one that continues to the games in Era of the Wild. This is shown when Chief Sira indicates her daughter Dona will be the next leader. So what can we learn from the Gerudo's history? Well, it's clear that when they're not being ruled by a literal demon, the Gerudo's relationship to Hyrule is much different. Under a female Gerudo chiefdom, the Gerudo live in peace with the Kingdom of Hyrule, becoming great allies during the Ancient and Great Calamities. By the events of Breath of the Wild, Lady Urbosa is shown to be the Queen's closest ally. At this point, they would have had independent rule for thousands of years. Prior to the Great Calamity, though, there's one more era of the Gerudo we need to return to, the Gerudo of the Zonai period. This is the era where we see a new and improved Ganondorf, who has brought the tribe back under the rule of a king. These are the conditions that would lead to the Civil War. So, let's dive on in. In the lead up to Tears of the Kingdom, as we learned there would be a new Ganondorf returning to the world, one of my first thoughts was, what does this mean for Riju? If by Gerudo law the male Gerudo should be king, would he be able to just stroll into Gerudo Town and snatch the throne from under her? And would the Gerudo people just accept that? That seems pretty unlikely, given their historical relationship with Ganondorf, and the fact that by the point of Tears of the Kingdom, the Gerudo would have experienced at least tens of thousands of years of a stable matriarchal monarchy. Going into the game, I expected to see Ganondorf in more direct conflict with Riju and her people in their dueling claims to the throne. What we got was tied to that, but it played out differently than I expected. As we know, the Ganondorf of Tears of the Kingdom is king of the Gerudo, fiercely protective of his desert and in staunch opposition to the founding of the Kingdom of Hyrule by the Zonai. I've previously theorized that the creation of the kingdom was less so a peaceful reunification and more so a conquest, but regardless of the circumstances, they were enraging enough to Ganon that he first launches an attack with the Molduga, and when that fails, he turns to a plot of false allegiance and betrayal as he steals the Secret Stone and becomes the all-powerful Demon King. We know that Ganondorf had followers loyal to him and his demonic armies, but there's evidence that some stood against him. There's the unnamed Sage of Lightning, of course, who joins the Zonai as the representative of her race, in a striking parallel to Naburu's rebellion and ascension to the Sages. But there's also one key scene that reveals the existence of a greater resistance, and even points to a civil war within the Gerudo. Let's take a look at this clip.
King Rauru, we just received word that the last free village in the Gerudo Desert has fallen. At this rate, the Demon King's army will overwhelm us.
Okay, you may be asking yourself, that's it? You're basing an entire theory off of one line of dialogue? Well, yes and no. This seemingly minor throwaway line actually has heavy lore implications, and is a key that unlocks so many other pieces of the theory. This line was fascinating to me, since I was primed and waiting for an open in-game Gerudo war, but the only direct mention of such a thing was in this one moment. The implications of the line are massive though. We now know that there were full settlements worth of Gerudo who turned on their king, meaning the warriors allied with Ganon were fighting their own kin in a civil war. While it's clear Ganon's side won the desert, being that the last free village fell, we know that in the end, once he's sealed and defeated, the Sage of Lightning will go on to take the mantle of leader, then found a line of queens that continues to Urbosa and then Riju, as the sage lets Riju know she is a direct descendant. So what happened next? The Gerudo Desert is filled with dark indicators of the aftermath of the Civil War that provide further evidence of these events. Let's put on our archaeologist hats and dig into these ruins. We now know that many of the ruins around the desert may have once been settlements that were destroyed in battle, as it's clear that in ancient times there were other villages besides Gerudo Town. In Breath of the Wild, we saw the return of Arbiter's Grounds, a prison from Twilight Princess that held Hyrule's worst criminals as they awaited execution. However, in the depths of Tears of the Kingdom, we learned that many more secrets were hiding just under the surface. Far below the sands of the desert, we see that directly beneath the ruins of Arbiter's Grounds lie a coliseum and a burial ground, known to hold the wrathful souls of the executed. Clear signs of a dark period in the Gerudo's history, as in the aftermath of the war, the Zonai-allied Gerudo likely took revenge on their traitorous sisters for turning on them, probably in the form of trial and execution. In the eastern side of the desert, we can also find a secondary jail that looks newer than the ruins of Arbiter's Grounds, indicating that additional holding cells were required for the number of traitors after the war. The cemetery next to Arbiter's Grounds is interesting, as it makes it very explicit that the bodies in the burial ground are those who were executed. Interestingly, the bodies in that cemetery are not regular human skeletons, but the insectoid Gibdos. We also see the Gibdos locked up in the cells of the eastern prison ruins. This is a key component that leads to the next piece of my theory, that the Gibdos we see in the game are all the reanimated corpses of Ganon's traitor Gerudo army. But why are they bugs? Hear me out, because it's tinfoil hat time. We know the Gibdos of Tears of the Kingdom have been summoned by Ganondorf, and they only appear in the Gerudo Desert. They're different than Stalfos because of their bug-like appearance and behavior. The Gibdo have a queen, and they have a hive mind-like relationship to her. Hive mind, huh? If these Gibdo were once Gerudo women, what would cause them to have a hive mind? Perhaps a little magical brainwashing would follow them into the afterlife. And we know two witches with a history of brainwashing. Kotake and Kuume, the twin witches who served as Ganon's surrogate mothers in Ocarina of Time and who reappear in Tears of the Kingdom. Now, go ahead and put another tinfoil hat on top of your tinfoil hat, because what if Kotake and Kuume, reborn in this lifetime, leveled up their efforts to support their boy and brainwashed half of the Gerudo to follow them and even turn on each other in the fight against the Zonai? And then, somehow, the effects of the brainwashing followed them into the afterlife so that they remained eternally loyal to the king and his lieutenants. But what about Queen Gibdo? Well, I know this part is a serious stretch, but my thinking is that the queen is the Gibdo-fied corpse of a unified Twinrova. She's much bigger than the other corpses, has elemental flying powers, and has antennae that somehow evoke the pigtails of Twinrova. And look, I know she's called queen because she's a bug, but the word obviously evokes the image of a female leader, and Twinrova appears to be Ganon's second in command here. I can't help but feel that they had a role in all this. And it does bring up questions for me as to why they're so dedicated to Ganondorf's rule across the games. But anyway, maybe the zombie Twinrova / brainwashing connection is a reach, but my other thought is that because Ganon's armies died in a dishonorable way, the traitor Gerudo are simply cursed to bear this form in the afterlife. We know the Gerudo take a great deal of interest and care in their funeral rites, much like the ancient Egyptians, and perhaps this is a reflection of that. In any case, it's pretty clear to me that the Gibdo bodies are the corpses of Ganon's Gerudo troops. As for the Zonai allied Gerudo, since they won the war, they were probably buried more peacefully. Maybe even in the pyramid alongside their leader's sarcophagi. As I've noted in a previous video, I believe the function of the pyramid is that of a sacred tomb. Feel free to check that out for more. Nabooru was the first Gerudo to rebel against Ganondorf, but her impact is felt throughout the history of the Gerudo, all the way to Breath of the Wild, where the divine beast is named in her honor. It certainly seems that her legacy of rebellion against a demon king is revered in their line. And it's clear why. The Gerudo thrive when they're girl-bossing and not being ruled by the living avatar of Demise. There may have been other civil wars throughout their history. Traditionalist factions who sided with the ancient laws enforcing their rule by a king, fighting against the progressive factions that moved towards the matrilineal chiefdom. Between Ocarina of Time and Tears of the Kingdom, we see many different outcomes for the Gerudo. But in the end, the side that followed in Nabooru's footsteps, turned on Ganondorf, and chose peace and diplomacy with Hyrule, were the ones that formed a chain of succession that lasted eons. But who knows? Maybe a future game will introduce a lost sect of Gerudo purists, still waiting for the next king to be born. Or even fighting to resurrect Ganondorf yet again. So, what do you think? Could a war have shaped the Gerudo's fate? Let me know in the comments, and if you liked this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. I've got plenty more unhinged ideas like Zombie Twinrova under my tinfoil hat that I'm excited to share. As always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.